This is the 3D Viewmaster Showtime Dark Shadows. Dark were the shifting shadows that waxed and waned among the turrets and gables of the great house of Collinwood. Darker still were the shadows that deepened over the souls of those who dwelled within, shadows of fear and evil and despair. It was fear and a desperate necessity that drove Barnabas Collins to leave the house in the dead of night, to make his way to a lonely dwelling by the sea. Asleep in that house was Eve, a strange being whom he must destroy before her evil genius could destroy Adam, her hapless mate, within whose man-made body pulsed the life force of Barnabas himself. He didn't know that behind his reasoning was Angelique, who wanted Eve killed to thwart the warlock Nicholas, who had great and terrible plans for Eve and Adam. As the curtain lifts, we see Barnabas stealthily approach Eve's bed, the lethal hypodermic in his hand. Overcoming his revulsion, he steels himself, flings back the covers. Viewmaster Reel 1. Picture 1. An exclamation of dismay escaped Barnabas' lips. The form beneath the covers was not Eve at all, but an artful dummy. He had been lured into a trap. But who? How? From the darkness came a low, mocking laugh, and he whirled, stared incredulously. "You!" he burst out, his voice hoarse with sudden terror. "But I thought I thought Nicholas." Again came the laugh. "You thought Nicholas had destroyed me, Angelique, your old love. Well, he didn't. At the last he let me live. And now, Barnabas." She moved a step toward him. He tried to recoil, but the heavy bed stopped him. "And now, this is what I am." The lovely lips parted in a smile, and Barnabas froze in horror. In her mouth were not ordinary teeth, but fangs. As the hypodermic clattered to the floor from his nerveless fingers, she lunged, clasped him in her arms, and he felt those wicked fangs pierce the flesh of his neck. Picture 2. His strength ebbed. He staggered to a chair. She knelt beside him, her hypnotic eyes fixing him. "Now you are mine forever," she whispered. "You can never escape me. Your will is now my will." Picture 3. Every step a monumental labor. So weak had he grown. Barnabas dragged himself back to the great house. Awaiting him were Dr. Julia Hoffman, who had created Adam by a series of transplants as part of Nicholas' great experiment. With her was Professor Stokes. All Barnabas could tell them were the lies Angelique willed him to voice. "I didn't do away with Eve," he panted. "She wasn't there. Nobody was there. I searched the house. No one." Picture 4. But Adam was there in the house by the sea, and he had that moment awakened to the touch of his master, Nicholas Blair, who had sold his soul to Belberith, a prince of darkness. He exclaimed as his eye caught fresh fang marks on Adam's neck, identical with those on Barnabas. Although Adam was strangely weak, just as Barnabas was, and tormented by fear, his voice was a whisper. "Nicholas, something horrible has happened, hasn't it? Something to do with Angelique?" The handsome but sinister face of Nicholas was grim as he got to his feet. "It has," he told the frightened Adam. "But it won't happen again, I promise you. Go back to sleep. I'm going now to have a word with a certain woman and take care of the matter." Picture 5. Confronting Angelique, Nicholas told her bluntly, "You will have to stop seeing Barnabas at once." "Stop seeing him," she retorted. "But I need him. You know that." "Of course I know it. But I also know, and so will you, if you try to recall what Eric Lang's tape recorder message was." Her face told him that she remembered. Well, what he said was true. "Just now I found fang marks on Adam because of what you did to Barnabas. I forbid you to hurt Adam again, so you must find another to meet your needs. When nightfall comes again, summon Joe Haskell, not Barnabas." She sneered. "So you can have Joe's precious matchy evens for yourself, you." He glared her to silence. Picture 6. That evening, Matchy found Joe at the Blue Whale drinking despondently. They tried to talk, but the evil shadow of Angelique was between them, and as night drew near, Joe left the tavern and went to her against his will. But filled with her unholy craving for Barnabas, Angelique rejected Joe, taunting him with the murdered scene of Matchy in the arms of Nicholas. Maddened, he seized a letter opener, plunged it into his chest, and fell lifeless to the floor. The merciless Angelique thought only of getting rid of the body. She needed help. "Barnabas," she whispered, knowing he must come in spite of himself. Picture 7. Impelled to answer Angelique's summons, Barnabas arrived to find her in a strange state of excitement, and on the floor the lifeless body of Joe Haskell, who had been his rival for the frightening affections of the woman in white. "Take him away," she commanded hysterically. Obeying, he caught sight of something that turned his blood to ice water. There, on the dead man's neck, were fresh marks like those on his own. Was it possible? With Joe already dead, had Angelique? His legs weak with the horror of it. It was all he could do to stagger out of the house with Joe in his arms. You must reel too. Picture 8. As fate would have it, the next evening was the time the mystery woman, Eve, chose to leave Adam's room for the first time, in defiance of Nicholas' orders, and on the terrace to encounter Jeff Clark. Recognition dawned, slowly then ecstatically. "Peter!" she cried out. "Peter Bradford!" Bewildered, he denied the name, but she insisted. "But you are Peter. My Peter Bradford. But I saw you die. Long ago." A sob broke from her, and she ran from the terrace. Picture 9. Bewildered, Eve fled back to Adam's room, only to find Nicholas awaiting her, demanding to know whom she had seen that disturbed her. Her answer was confusing, but it told him enough to know that Jeff Clark was involved. Needing to know more, he mesmerized her to send her back to her previous life nearly 200 years before. Fix your eyes on the candle, he commanded, and concentrate. You are moving back through the years, back. First Eve went limp, then she stiffened and cried out. Peter, I did it for us. For you and me, I killed Philip, because he would have killed you. I swear he would. Peter, don't look at me that way. Don't condemn me. I tell you I had to do it, Peter. The workings of implacable fate lay behind Eve's confrontation with Jeff on the terrace. In the Collinsport of colonial days, grim tragedy parted these star-crossed lovers at the very foot of the hangman's scaffold. Jeff, whose name in that earlier incarnation had been Peter Bradford, saved Eve's life by confessing to a murder that she, not he, had committed. Picture 10. Such was the force of Nicholas' mesmeric power that, for a time, Eve lost all awareness of the present and returned completely to her previous existence in colonial Collinsport near the end of the 18th century. Reliving her tragic confrontation with Peter Bradford, she cried out again and again under the merciless lash of his anger at her slaying of Philip, who had tried to come between them. In the end, Peter had rejected her utterly with the cruel words, "Get out of my life and never return." But now Peter himself had returned. Watching her with fascinated eyes, Nicholas saw her suddenly snap out of the trance, tears streaming from her eyes, murmuring, "The man I saw tonight is Peter Bradford, and I love him." Condemned to die on the scaffold, Peter heroically rejected Eve's pleas to save himself by surrendering his soul to the powers of witchcraft which she herself had embraced long ago. Thus an innocent man died in ignorance of the fact that Eve's power would work on him even in their death, and that the two of them would meet again after long centuries had passed. Picture 11. While Eve's retreat to the past was going on at Blair House, fear permitted one of the rooms at Collinwood like a tangible thing. Victoria Winters, trying to tell Elizabeth Stoddard about her plans for marriage with Jeff, found the older woman returning again to the dread conviction that had been growing on her for some time, that her fate was to be buried alive. Vicky's effort to make light of this obsession met with no success. "It's no use talking," Elizabeth insisted. "I can hear the spirits of the dead. They say I will be among them, but I will not be dead." Picture 12. In another room of the great house, time was running out for Joe Haskell, who hadn't quite succeeded in killing himself. "Poison," however, had been poured into his medicine by Harry Johnson, and now Barnabas, moving like a sleepwalker at Angelique's command, was about to feed the concoction to the helpless man. He was aware that he was about to commit a murderous act, but was unable to stop himself. At the ultimate moment, chance intervened. Julia Hoffman, seeking the professor, burst into the room barely in time to knock the spoon from Barnabas' hand. Picture 13. Joe emerged at last from his death-like sleep just in time to hear Julia say the medicine was poisoned and that Barnabas had tried to give it to him. Enraged, Joe seized a cord and prowled the darkening house until he found Barnabas dozing in his chair. Whipping the cord around the defenseless neck, he jerked it tighter, tighter. Barnabas' eyes bulged. The world turned black. Again, fate took a hand in the form of a woman. Mrs. Johnson appeared and, with a scream, hurled herself on the panting Joe and loosened his grip on the murderous cord. Barnabas slid lifeless to the floor. Picture 14. Roger Collins, hoping to talk Elizabeth out of her obsessive determination to build a new, safe mausoleum, went with her to the family crypt. Sounds they heard there, interpreted by Elizabeth as spirit voices, turned out to come from Joe, who had come there, weak and terrified, to hide after his assault on Barnabas. Roger, after calming his hysterical companion, carried Joe back to the house. Viewmaster Reel 3. Picture 15. With the setting of each day's sun, Angelique became bolder and more rebellious against her domination by Nicholas. She would outwit him and make Barnabas hers forever. Then he, too, would sleep in coffins by day and by night roam the world seeking. Luring him to secret cave by the sea, she bared her fangs and grasped him in her terrible embrace, draining his life essences almost to the last drop. When he recovered enough to speak, he panted, "You've gone too far. I'm going to die. I hope I die." And Nicholas will wreak a fearful vengeance on you. In reply, she shrieked, "I defy him to do his worst. And you will not die. You will be mine forever." And with that, she fled back to her crypt, for day was near. Picture 16. Though she defied him, Angelique did not receive Nicholas. Discovering that Adam had weakened to the point of death, he knew that Angelique was endangering the life of Barnabas and ruining his plans. For this, she must pay with her life, and the only way to take the life of a vampire was to drive a silver stake through her breast as she lay sleeping in her crypt. But when he arrived, armed with hammer and stake, Angelique's coffin was empty. He trembled, aghast, for he knew why. Belberth, his own master, had summoned her to the netherworld, and the outcome of that meeting could bode nothing but ill for Nicholas, because he had been outwitted by Angelique's greed for Barnabas. Picture 17. The evil miasma of the netherworld, curled around the golden head of Angelique, and a hooded figure spoke in awesome tones. My faithless servant Nicholas has become enamored of a mortal female named Maggie, while you, Angelique, have defied him. You shall be rewarded, and he shall suffer a dreadful punishment. He paused, while the screams of the damned swelled up and then receded. Then he went on. As your reward, Angelique, I will remove the curse I put upon you, and you shall return to human form. Picture 18. Only moments after the confrontation in the netherworld, Maggie Evans paid an unexpected call on Nicholas at Blair House. She seemed confused, almost trance-like. "What is it, Maggie?" he asked uneasily. "Why did you come here?" I don't know," she replied. "I only know I had to come. Something made me, some power that." Suddenly, stark terror filled her eyes. "Oh, Nicholas," she gasped. "Everything is getting dark, and I can't get my breath. Oh, Nicholas, help me." She reeled, staggered to the sofa and collapsed. An unearthly humming filled the room. The lights went dim. Picture 19. "Nicholas!" Every vestige of color drained from Nicholas' face. His name had been called from the throat of Maggie, but it was not Maggie's voice. It was the voice of Balberith, and the room seemed to pulsate with his unholy presence. "Yes, master," Nicholas quavered. "Prepare to meet your judgment, Nicholas." Nicholas seized a chair, back to support his weight. Judgment, he moaned. "Tomorrow you will appear before me. Prepare yourself." Picture 20. With a supreme effort, Nicholas pulled himself together after Maggie had gone. His fertile brain worked swiftly. Balberith was calling him to account for letting Eve die, and for other sins as well. With some kind of plan, perhaps he could stave off the utter destruction that threatened him. In a flash, it came to him, and he dashed off to Collingwood to find Julia Hoffman. It all depended on her, not even caring that Elizabeth was listening. He told her she must repeat the experiment, infusing new life into the dead Eve. Balberith needed Eve so that she and Adam could start a new race of men who would be his servants. Horrified, Julia refused, and Nicholas played his trump card. "Very well, then I will take Adam's life." Julia paled. "Then Barnabas too will die." His answer was an evil smile. She stared at him with revulsion, but at last she sighed with resignation. "So be it. You may bring Eve's body to my laboratory tonight." Picture 21. Nicholas' hour had come. He stood before Balberith in limbo, pleading for one more chance. If the experiment worked, he could go on serving his master in the human world and have Maggie besides. His proposal met cosmic scorn. "I give no second chance, Nicholas, as you did with Angelique. No, you will return her for eternity." But if the experiment is successful, you may bring the woman with you. Bring her, but it means she must die. Of course, on the black altar. The vine's laughter rose, filling the vast corridors of limbo. Go, Nicholas, go back to earth and prepare your wedding plans. Roiling masses of fog billowed about the towers of Collingwood as Nicholas returned, creating, even by day, dark shadows. We want to add new videos every day, and if you don't want to miss any of them, subscribe to our channel for free.
And press the little bell. We are also happy to have a thumb up.